After 14 grueling hours to support my son and daughter-in-law, I discovered an incredible surprise. The sterile, fluorescent lights of St. Mary's Hospital cast a clinical glow over the waiting room. My heart raced, the tension thick in the air as I paced, my boots scuffing against the hard floor, disbelief swirling inside me. Was it possible that after all the worry, the anxiety of the past weeks, we now had a granddaughter? Little Amelia was on her way into the world, her tiny frame ready to fill our lives with hope. But just as the overwhelmed joy washed over me, it was eclipsed by a specter from my past. The doctor approached, the measured uncertainty in his steps striking fear into my chest. He looked at me, his expression shifting from professional to something almost sympathetic, as if ready to deliver bad news. I braced myself. Instead of a warning, he unveiled a truth that felt like a wrecking ball crashing into my safe, predictable life. "Jake," he said slowly, "your father's research has come to light, and it's remarkable." A mix of bewilderment and shame knotted my stomach. My father, the estranged genius I had grown up resenting, had left behind a legacy I was completely unaware existed. Here I was, a mechanic carrying the weight of my family's simple, hard-working values, and now I was faced with the challenge of living with the shadow of a man I barely knew. How could I step into his world? What did this mean for me? Rising anticipation mingled with an unbearable sense of inadequacy. The thought of jumping into the academic fray felt like treason against the principles my parents had instilled in me. Hard work over ambition, humility over pride. Yet the gnawing desire to discover what I could do with this new revelation clawed at my insides. The memory of my childhood rival, Ethan, resurfaced sharply, his taunts echoing in my mind. The tension between familial loyalty and desire lingered uncomfortably, reminding me of the way Ethan had gleefully sabotaged my aspirations back in college. I could almost hear him sneering, waiting for an opportunity to claim whatever might come of my father's work. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. With every breath, I felt the pressure mounting. I could feel my hands shake slightly at the thought of presenting myself to the academic elite, a place so foreign and daunting. What if they recognized Ethan's name before mine? What if I stumbled over my words? The very things that made my life felt unimportant now seemed insufficient in the face of an unlivable legacy. My daughter's gaze, filled with admiration, only fueled my growing discontent. She deserved a father willing to shoot for the stars. But could I leave behind the grease-stained mechanics of my garage? The crossroads before me felt paralyzing, my heart hammered with a mix of dread and a strange, uncharted longing. I stood on the precipice, looking into uncharted territory that threatened to swallow my life whole. Could I embrace my father's brilliance while keeping my humble roots? The questions spiraled, teetering on the edge of despair, feeling like a profound betrayal against everything I had ever cherished. Where would this newfound knowledge lead me? Dread settled deep within, heavy like a tool belt as I braced for the inevitable confrontation with Ethan. In that moment, the choice loomed larger than life itself. Would I find the courage to forge my own path amid the shadows, or would the weight of expectation crush me beneath its relentless pressure? The following morning broke through a haze of conflicting emotions. Jake sat on the edge of his bed, the sunlight filtering through the blinds, casting lines across his worn-out work boots. Fragments of his father's legacy danced through his mind, filling him with both intrigue and an acute sense of dislocation. His hands itched for the familiar weight of wrenches and engines, yet his mind wrestled with a craving to understand what lay beneath the surface of that legacy. What had his father done? The weight of that question rose to form a dense cloud in his chest. Memories of mechanic school flooded his psyche, faces of classmates who moved on to greater aspirations while he remained anchored in the garage. Those thoughts were painful, sharpening his resolve into something dangerously dualistic. Would this knowledge about his father finally provide him the route to redefine his identity, or would it break him down further? Determination ignited within him. He wasn't the boy his father had neglected, nor the unfortunate man haunted by resentment. He was Jake, a father, a husband, and perhaps someone capable of grasping the essence of this newfound legacy. The urge to understand the compelling work that was finally unveiled was too potent to resist. Picking up his phone, Jake glanced at the messages coming through. Aside from the obligatory messages of congratulations from family, one stood out, a notification prompting him to attend a conference dedicated to discussing his father's work. The erudition of Dr. Thomas Kingston, past, present, and future. His reaction was visceral. A mixture of excitement and a hint of dread churned through him. This was it, an opportunity to confront the specter of his father, but it was also a confrontation with Ethan, who might be lurking behind the shadows, waiting to belittle his efforts. Should he ignore the invite?
Deny himself the chance to step into a world that had been closed off for so long? But as he made that calculus, he acknowledged the nagging voice within, urging him to take a step forward. He knew he had to go. The act felt akin to jumping into icy waters, terrifying but freeing. Deciding to sign up for the conference required a leap of faith. Once he clicked register, he felt the small thrill of accomplishment. But it was fleeting, replaced by a rising tension that cloaked him like a second skin. What would it demand of him? Would he be seen as an imposter? Would he hold his own against the academic elite? The more he contemplated, the clearer it became. He needed to prepare. It wasn't enough to simply go and expose himself. He needed to understand the depth of his father's work, what it meant to those who had dedicated their lives to it. Hours turned into days as he fervently searched databases, reading papers and articles, each piece feeding his curiosity, lighting a fire igniting beneath the surface of insecurities. With every discovery, he felt the tendrils of his father's influence weaving into his own identity. It was disconcerting, but exhilarating. Yet, while he embraced the knowledge, doubt lingered. Would this newfound passion alienate him from the family business he had committed to? Would it drive a wedge between his identity as a mechanic and a son? Thoughts swirled, relentless and taunting like shadows at dusk. The day of the conference approached with a steadier pulse. He circled back to his childhood, recalling the pride he had felt as a mechanic, the satisfaction of his hands deeply stained with grease, and the roar of engines he'd been drawn to. Those memories grounded him, offering clarity as he began to draft his thoughts. Perhaps, he mused, this was not about losing himself, but rather expanding his horizons. When the conference day finally dawned, Jake stood in front of the mirror, regarding the rugged lines of his face, all the years etched into the skin. Today felt like a rebirth, a breadcrumb trail toward reconciliation. He dressed with care, a blend of professional attire and a hint of his mechanic roots, wanting to bridge that gap. As he stepped outside, a low knot of anticipation strung tightly within him. The conference loomed ahead, menacing and inviting, a unique blend of fear and hope. He was about to step into a world that might expose him to much more than just the brilliance of his father. It was time to face Ethan, not as a rival, but as an individual armed with determination and self-worth. In that moment, the weight of expectation shifted from oppressive to empowering. He took a deep breath and muttered to himself to summon the courage. Would he finally claim the identity he had longed for? Jake's heart raced as he stepped toward the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The time had come to find out what that legacy meant, not just for his father, but for him. The conference center loomed in the distance, a modern fortress of glass and steel. As Jake approached its imposing entrance, he felt an unsettling mix of apprehension and exhilaration. The professional side of him buzzed with anticipation, while the son in him battled shadowy doubts. He could imagine the crisp, sterile air within, and the hushed murmurs of intellectual discourse, so foreign yet tantalizing. He gripped the strap of his messenger bag, filled with his notes and laptop, belonging to the man who had once only belonged to the grease-stained world of engines and gears. The shift was monumental, a fracture from his routine. His breath awakened the fading memories of workshops filled with clangs and the comforting smells of motor oil. Now he was on the precipice of an entirely new identity that hinged precariously on the validation he sought. Inside, the lobby shimmered under fluorescent lights, and attendees mingled, exchanging pleasantries laced with disparate tones, some casual, others deeply scholarly. As he scanned the crowd, recognition struck him like a bolt of lightning. There stood Ethan, his older brother's friend, and an established figure in academia. Ethan's sharp eyes caught Jake's gaze, a smug smile emerging to mock the thought of his brother's legacy passing into this lesser-known sibling. An unsettling knot twisted in Jake's stomach. Jake steeled himself and made his way through the crowd. He engaged in polite conversation, but felt like an imposter, a mechanic in a sea of scholars. He tucked his hands into his pockets to quell their trembling. Then he heard the call for the first panel discussion featuring speakers who had collaborated with his father. As he took a seat in the crowded auditorium, his heart thudded in sync with the murmurs of the audience. Each speaker spoke with a passion that reverberated through the air, honoring Dr. Thomas Kingston's groundbreaking research. They discussed complexities and breakthroughs, their words weaving an intricate tapestry of ideas. The raw emotional energy they projected was captivating. Yet, in the midst of their eloquence, Jake felt adrift amongst a sea of knowledge he feared would drown him. And then, one speaker shared a personal anecdote about his father, detailing an impactful moment during a pivotal project. The speaker described how Dr. Kingston had taken immense risks, not just in science, but in challenging societal norms for the greater good. It ignited something deep within Jake, a realization squirming beneath layers of uncertainty. He started to connect the dots. His father had been more than a scientist. He had been a pioneer, an advocate for change. As the session ended, Jake felt summoned, not just by his father's legacy, but by a burgeoning sense of purpose. He could approach this as an opportunity to reclaim his narrative rather than being a mere extension of someone else's shadow.
He walked up to a small group that included some of the panelists, determined to engage, to voice his burgeoning ideas, fueled by his raw experiences as a mechanic. The conversations flowed, and as his confidence blossomed, Jake discovered a rhythm. In discussing practical applications of theories on engines in conjunction with sustainable practices, he felt a bond begin to form. It was his first step toward not just understanding his father's work, but melding it with his upbringing, his reality. As he shared his thoughts, he began to see esteem reflected in their eyes. But then, without warning, Ethan broke through the crowd, his presence like a dark cloud. "Well, if it isn't the Kingston family's black sheep," he sneered, stealthily weaving through colleagues. "What do you hope to glean? A tow truck license?" The laughter from nearby attendees erupted, echoing Jake's worst fears. The moment lingered, heavy with judgment, and rage bubbled within. Jake clutched the edge of the table, feeling the familiar heat of humiliation coursing through him. But it also ignited a spark. Was he going to let one person redefine who he was? As the laughter faded, Jake opened his mouth, ready to confront the brunt of familial condemnation. But it would be more than just words. It would be a declaration. He had come too far to allow anyone, least of all Ethan, to strip him of this journey and newfound understanding. Jake straightened his back, the murmurs of the crowd fading into an anticipatory hush. He would speak up for himself, and for the man he wished to become. Would his confrontation with Ethan be the breakthrough he needed to redefine his legacy? The answer hung in the air, heavy with potential and uncertainty. Jake felt the weight of all eyes on him, the air thick with tension, punctuated by the lingering chuckles of amusement. It was as if time slowed, the laughter dulling his senses, while sharpening his focus. For a heartbeat, he wrestled with the impulse to retreat, to slip back into the shadows where he often felt most comfortable. But the flicker of defiance ignited within him, fueled by the realization that he could no longer allow his identity to be dictated by others, particularly someone like Ethan. "Actually, Ethan," Jake began, his voice steadier than he felt, "I'm here to explore how practical applications can change the way we perceive our work in the field." He looked directly into Ethan's eyes, refusing to let his resolve break. The mocking smile faltered slightly as surprise registered on Ethan's face. The surrounding crowd was momentarily caught off guard, then shifted their attention, surprised to hear Jake speak with such conviction. Encouraged, he pressed on. "What's true is that being part of a legacy doesn't mean imitating it. My father was an innovator. He challenged norms, just like he did, and I plan to do the same, but in my own way." His words hung in the air, simmering with defiance and determination.
There was a palpable shift as murmurs of approval began to ripple through the audience. Jake's heart raced with adrenaline, the confident surge pushing away the shadows of doubt that had plagued him moments before. He had grasped a thread of his father's spirit, and was weaving it into his own narrative. Ethan's expression turned defensive, a flicker of anger sparking behind his cool veneer. You think you can just step into this world with your greasy hands and advocate for breakthroughs? You don't belong here. Jake clenched his fists, words bubbling to the surface. What would it mean to truly belong? Was it not about earning respect, proving oneself? All he had to present were his experiences, his insights, the marriage of his father's legacy with his mechanical knowledge. Maybe belonging isn't about titles, Jake countered, pushing his voice to be heard above the crowd, but about the passion and perspective you bring to the table. Take those engines, for example. They can be transformed to promote sustainability. I understand how they work. I know. Enough with your fantasies. Real contributions come from people with real education, Ethan interrupted sharply, seeking to cut down Jake once again. That cut through Jake like a knife. It was a challenge, no doubt, but it also provided a clarity that made his path forward sharper. He could see it, the duality of responsibility he faced. Jake knew he had the practical knowledge to innovate, to identify problems and solve them in ways that were tangible. Yet the academic validation Ethan thrived on was a barrier he had to confront. Did he need to seek formal education to solidify his vision, or could he carve his own path in this landscape? With newfound resolve, he declared, "Then help me understand how education works, not by belittling my experience, but in guiding it. I'm ready to learn. This is about progression, not regression." The surprise in Ethan's eyes was unmistakable. He, who always held the upper hand, could see the determination in Jake's stance. The taunts from the crowd faded, but Jake felt invigorated by the confrontation. Each word fed his growing courage, transforming the fear of judgment into fuel for his journey ahead. Taking a step back, he glanced at the applauding panelists who had witnessed this exchange. Their faces reflected admiration, acknowledgement of his bravery. He had stepped beyond mere survival. With every passing moment, Jake was crafting his personal evolution. As the panelists began wrapping up their discussions, Jake felt the contours of a new identity solidifying. It would take time, and perhaps academic pursuits loomed on the horizon, but the fear of weakness had been quelled. Standing there amidst the crowd, he wondered what potential lay ahead. Could he chart a roadmap that fused the best of both worlds? Could he delve into environmental innovations, yet never lose sight of the craft he adored?
The questions danced in his mind, cluttered yet electric with possibilities. He felt the urge to recalibrate his path, to seize this momentum. As soon as the session concluded, he would seek out the panelists and discuss potential collaborations beyond this confrontation. But would he be prepared to lay the groundwork required to fan the flames of his newfound ambition? The prospect of change shimmered tantalizingly close, yet Jake knew it would require laying bare both vulnerabilities and strengths before he could truly ascend. As the last speaker concluded their remarks, Jake's heart thudded with anticipation. The applause faded, leaving an echoing silence punctuated only by the rustling of papers and chairs. He spotted the panelists gathering their belongings, immersed in conversation, and he knew he had to act quickly. This was his opportunity to cement the newfound clarity he felt and transition it into real action. Stepping forward, he felt a wave of trepidation wash over him. It wasn't merely the fear of rejection. It was a deeper uncertainty. Would they take him seriously? Could he turn his insights into a pragmatic approach that resonated with their academic ideals? "Excuse me," he called out, his voice steady yet laced with urgency. The panelists turned, their expression shifting from bemusement to curiosity. "I'd like to talk about collaborating on practical applications for sustainability in engineering." One of the panelists, Dr. Harper, a well-respected figure in environmental engineering, raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly do you envision?" she inquired, crossing her arms, a subtle sign that she was intrigued yet skeptical. Jake hesitated for a moment before diving into his ideas. He outlined his vision for sustainable engine modifications, drawing on the knowledge he had gleaned through years of hands-on experience. With each word, he painted a picture, one that juxtaposed inventive spirit with the rigors of academia. The fear of looking foolish faded, as he realized Dr. Harper's eyes remained fixed on him, still evaluating, but with a spark of interest flickering in her gaze. "I understand the theoretical knowledge is crucial," he stated, But there's a real synergy between practical experience and educational theories that can lead to groundbreaking advancements. This is an opportunity to merge two worlds. The other panelists exchanged glances. Jake sensed he was holding their attention. The way they leaned in slightly made him feel more emboldened. Yet doubt seeped through as he questioned whether they could relate to his journey. Did he belong in these academic circles, or was he still that hesitant boy waiting for someone else's approval? What specific education do you think would support your vision? Dr. Harper changed her approach, her tone shifting to that of collaboration. Jake took a deep breath, recognizing the opening she'd given him.
I'm considering formal courses, perhaps even environmental science, to better align with the principles underpinning my proposals. But I also believe mentorship from experienced professionals like you would be invaluable. The hesitance on Dr. Harper's face gave way to contemplation. Jake's persistence was palpable, and each word he uttered reflected the evolution of his self-image. No longer merely a technician, he was aspiring to become a contributing member in a community of innovators. As discussions continued, the conversation transitioned to specifics about educational options and potential partnerships. Each query and suggestion reinforced Jake's conviction that his path would require further education, yet it wouldn't strip him of his identity. Rather, it would enrich it, forging new connections between the theoretical foundations he had yet to grasp and the practical insights he had mastered. When the dialogue finally lulled, she asked, "Are you prepared to dedicate yourself to rigorous study alongside your practical pursuits?" The question struck him as both daunting and exhilarating. It was a test, one that could determine how seriously he would commit to this new chapter of his life. "Absolutely," he replied, vulnerability giving way to determination. "I'm ready to embrace the discomfort of learning something new, especially if it pushes me toward genuinely impactful solutions." The words left his mouth with finality, yet uncertainty lingered. Could he truly balance both worlds? The road ahead seemed enigmatic but necessary. With the panelists nodding in agreement, there was a powerful sense of invitation on their faces, an acknowledgement that they might indeed collaborate beyond the theoretical. As the evening wound down, Jake felt lighter, though the apprehension of the unknown loomed large. He was stepping into a world that could validate his relentless ambition. However, the true potential of his metamorphosis still lay ahead. Would he rise to the challenge, or would self-doubt pull him back once more? As he exited the auditorium, the flickering lights dimmed behind him, a metaphor for the uncertainties that awaited. But just outside the door, he spotted a flyer announcing an upcoming seminar on sustainable practices in engineering, his next opportunity. Could this be the start of a new chapter, or would he falter at the threshold? The moment Jake stepped outside, the cool evening air wrapped around him like a blanket, refreshing yet unsettling. He held the seminar flyer in his hands, the ink still crisp against his fingers. The prospect of attending excited him, but it also reignited the familiar flicker of apprehension. What if he floundered in the complexity of the presentations? What if his questions exposed his ignorance in front of seasoned professionals? As he walked back to his car, other thoughts began to churn within him. This wasn't just a seminar, it was an opportunity to further define his identity.
He yearned to gather insights, to build the foundation for the new chapter he had just begun to dare envision. But as he merged back into the streetlight's glow, shadows of self-doubt also trailed closely. A few days later, Jake found himself sitting in the seminar hall, surrounded by a mixture of eager students and accomplished engineers. The buzzing energy was palpable, yet he felt like an intruder among their confident exchanges. He peppered the program with notes, his hand moving busily from page to page. Each mention of innovative technologies and sustainability ignited sparks of inspiration, yet they also illuminated gaps in his knowledge, widening the chasm between where he stood and where he wanted to be. During one session, a guest speaker presented on the feasibility of integrating bioplastics into automotive design. As Jake absorbed the information, his mind raced with ideas of how such materials could revolutionize the engines he had long worked to modify. But the moment he considered raising his hand to ask about practical applications, uncertainty gnawed at him. The thought slithered in. Who would listen to someone like him? In that moment, he realized the inner conflict was only growing. Each question he hesitated to voice felt like an opportunity slipping through his fingers, yet the desire to hide behind the veil of anonymity pulled him back. He was standing at the precipice, and it was time to leap. Just as the session wrapped up, he forced himself to stand. The room shifted as pairs of eyes turned toward him, and for an instant the weight of their stares melded fear and exhilaration. "Could you expand on the application of bioplastics in engine designs? I've worked with engine modifications, and I see a potential intersection here," he managed. The speaker's eyes widened in surprise.
Then animated interest flared as they engaged directly with Jake's question. Waves of relief washed over him. He wasn't just a technician anymore. He was contributing to the dialogue, engaged in a conversation that once felt unattainable. After the session, energized yet overwhelmed, Jake approached the speaker. They discussed his vision of sustainable modifications, and while their conversation was brief, it felt monumental. For the first time, Jake articulated his ideas with confidence, as though he were drawing the academic world closer to his practical experience. But returning home, excitement quickly morphed into doubt. Was he becoming too bold? What if he overstepped? He questioned the repercussions of his newfound voice, whether it would be welcomed or stifled within a domain that had long thrived on established expertise. At that moment, Jake faced the very essence of his professional development, the need for balance. It was imperative to assert himself while simultaneously remaining open to learning. This was the tension he had to navigate, and each interaction was a test of his resolve.
As he stripped off his worn-out work boots and washed his hands, a lingering sense of urgency accompanied his reflection. The seminar had sparked something in him, an unquenchable thirst for knowledge and collaboration. He would course-correct every time self-doubt threatened to reroute him. In the days that followed, he wrote out goal lists and researched potential mentors relentlessly. Yet with each proposal he considered, a troubling thought emerged. Would he truly be able to keep this momentum, especially with heavy burdens of responsibility at home? The next seminar was just around the corner, and while opportunities loomed, the fear of failing to harness them settled heavily on his shoulders. Could he transform this momentary inspiration into lasting change? The uncertainty weighed on him, but beneath it flickered the sparks of determination. He climbed into bed, restless yet resolved. Tomorrow would be different. The journey had only begun. Would Jake find the courage to break through the barriers of uncertainty once and for all? The weeks following the seminar became a whirlwind of activity for Jake, an exhilarating blend of ambition and trepidation. Each morning began with fervent goal-setting sessions, where he not only contemplated his aspirations, but defined actionable steps to achieve them. He meticulously crafted a roadmap, establishing timelines and checkpoints, an essential discipline he felt was crucial to his transformation. Yet the heavy responsibilities at home loomed over him like a thundercloud. Balancing late nights at the garage and early mornings with his growing family was an exhausting endeavor, but he resolved to not let it quell his newfound determination. He often found himself awake after midnight, eyes glued to articles on the latest engineering breakthroughs. His passion ignited anew with every satisfied glance at his notes, reinforcing a deep-seated belief that he could carve out an identity that blended his technical mastery with a vision for sustainability. Jake also sought mentorship, carefully researching individuals who could act as guiding lights through the fog of uncertainty. He reached out to several professionals, crafting messages that articulated his aspirations and the intuition that he could contribute meaningfully to their fields. The act of reaching out felt daunting, but he forced himself past the discomfort, knowing it was essential. He received a couple of responses, one from an industry leader renowned for innovative materials, another from a veteran engineer who had transitioned into academia. Jake's pulse quickened as he scheduled a meeting with the materials expert. In preparation for the call, he practiced articulating his vision, refining his thoughts until they glimmered with clarity. He wanted this opportunity to count. It was essential, he reminded himself, to focus on the ideas he wished to share, rather than succumb to the fear of how they might be perceived. When the day arrived, Jake sat before his laptop, a knot of anticipation tightening in his stomach. The connection established, and the familiar face of the expert filled his screen. Conversation commenced, flowed smoothly initially, but as they talked about bioplastics, Jake felt his heart race. He drew upon his earlier experiences, channeling both his technical background and evolving insights into sustainability. But as the expert posed a question about market viability, the apprehension gripped Jake. It surged up his chest, and for a brief moment he faltered. Memories of uncertainty flooded back, of moments when he had preferred to remain silent. Yet he recognized this as a decisive moment, one that could either reinforce his emerging identity or send him scuttling back into obscurity. With a deep breath, he countered the question, spinning it into a discussion about the feasibility of introducing sustainable practices at various organizational levels. The ensuing conversation flowed unexpectedly well, but he also sensed hesitation in the mentor's feedback, an indication that he needed to deepen his knowledge. Days turned into weeks, and while he was grateful for the connection, he felt unmoored, acutely aware of a disparity.
The professional world where he strove to thrive was still largely foreign. Each new concept he encountered opened doors to other uncertainties. Jake started reflecting on foundational knowledge he might have overlooked. Had he truly grasped the interplay between engineering and sustainable innovation? Thoughts of potential blind spots nagged at him. Even as he immersed himself in learning, doubt whispered insidiously. Would he uncover deficiencies that rendered him incapable of adequately contributing? Could he adapt with critical grace in an industry rapidly evolving beyond his initial skills? As he wrestled with these fears, an email notification blipped on his phone, redirecting his concentration. It was an invitation for a panel discussion on sustainable design practices, open to public participation. The speakers' roster included respected figures whose opinions he had once only read about. The invitation sat tantalizingly on his screen, a beacon of promise laced with overwhelming apprehension. This was not just another seminar. It could be a pivotal opportunity, an arena where he could showcase his commitment and potentially forge ties with individuals at the forefront of the industry. As Jake clicked to register, he knew this could be his chance to rise beyond mere participation. But as excitement battled with anxiety, he wondered if he was truly ready to step beyond the shadows and stake his claim amidst powerful voices. Would he be able to seize this opportunity, or would his self-doubt once again hold him back?
Only time would reveal the answers. Jake hardly slept a wink the night before the panel discussion. The juxtaposition of ecstatic anticipation and paralyzing fear had left him tossing in bed, thoughts racing like an engineer brainstorming solutions under pressure. He rose early, unable to shake the feeling that this opportunity might either validate his efforts or expose his vulnerabilities, a haunting dichotomy that accompanied him throughout the morning. As he prepared for the event, his hands trembled slightly while tying his tie. The mirror reflected a man who meticulously polished his appearance, a semblance of general confidence clashing with the chaos swirling in his mind. What if he stumbled over his words? What if questions posed to him revealed gaping holes in his understanding? The prospect of standing before luminaries in sustainable engineering ignited a fierce anxiety that made it difficult to breathe fully. Arriving at the venue, Jake scanned the room filled with attendees who seemed undeterred and self-assured. Each face reflected a layer of determination, each conversation a display of expertise he yearned to attain. He felt like an imposter slipping through a door meant for giants, unsure of where he fit into this intricate tapestry of knowledge. But as the panel commenced, something within him shifted. The speakers, articulate and passionate, spoke not just of their successes, but the obstacles they overcame. Their stories resonated deeply, suggesting that vulnerability and struggle were merely parts of the journey, not disqualifiers. Slowly, Jake felt the tension release its grip, if only a fraction. He thought back to his own uncertainties, realizing they were not an end, but merely a beginning, a shared human experience. He focused intently, absorbing not just their words, but the underlying principles that connected them, a network of persistence, innovation, and a relentless pursuit of knowledge. It was a reminder that every professional encounter opened doors not just for discussions, but for redefinition. His heart raced again, but this time it pulsed with unwavering determination rather than fear. When the panelists concluded and the floor opened for questions, Jake's mind raced with thoughts fueled by his recent studies. He raised his hand, fighting through the wave of anxiety as eyes turned towards him. He pushed aside the mental specter of inadequacy and prepared a succinct question about the integration of sustainable practices in traditional engineering sectors. As he spoke, clarity surged through him. His words flowed with a newfound conviction, intertwining his anxiety with the passion that had propelled him here. The moderator acknowledged his input with a nod of recognition, and in that moment, Jake felt seen. A small yet significant triumph, contrasting his earlier doubts. Afterward, networking became a whirlwind of introductions and discussions, where he exchanged ideas and shared his vision.
He spoke with another participant who seemed equally passionate, and they discovered overlapping professional interests. Sparks of collaboration ignited as they mused about potential projects to intersect their talents. And Jake realized he was not merely an observer. He had carved a space for himself amid these influential figures. As the event wrapped up, Jake stepped outside, the evening air cool against his flushed skin. The sun dipped low, casting a golden hue that accentuated his resolve. What began as a daunting challenge had transformed, not into effortless success,
but into a testament to his willingness to face his fears. He had ventured beyond the shadows and stepped confidently. It was not merely about arriving at an endpoint, but embracing the continuous journey of growth. But deep down, another feeling lingered. The tension of unresolved questions still wrapped around him. Could he truly leverage this momentum into something lasting? The weight of his ambition intertwined with the fear of not fully capitalizing on this opportunity. As he walked toward his car, his phone buzzed. An email notification flashed, a follow-up message from the industry leader he had connected with previously, hinting at an upcoming project that could benefit from innovative ideas. This could be his moment. Jake's heart raced as he opened the email, breath held in anticipation. Would this lead to the breakthrough he desperately sought, or would his moment of potential slip away? The answer lingered tantalizingly, just beyond the screen. Jake's fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, eyes locked on the email's contents. The message was succinct, inviting him to collaborate on an innovative renewable energy project that aimed to redefine efficiency standards in urban settings. This was more than just an opportunity. It was a chance to prove himself. But as excitement welled within him, so did a creeping sense of intimidation. What if his innovative ideas weren't enough? With the email still illuminated on his screen, Jake felt a whirlwind of emotions, anxiety, hope, and an almost urgent call to action. He closed the laptop and sank deep into thought, pushing against the constraints of self-doubt that had often tethered him. This was not merely a project. It was a pivotal moment to cement his place in a field he had yearned to influence. He took a deep breath and began drafting a response. Each word felt like a step toward reclaiming his confidence. He outlined his thoughts on how technologies from recent advancements in energy storage could enhance their plans, envisioning ways his ideas could integrate seamlessly into the project's larger vision. As he typed, Jake felt a dawning realization. He had value to offer, even if the specter of inadequacy continued to loom overhead. After sending the email, he shifted his focus to his professional development. The panel discussion had ignited an urge to learn more, dive deeper into sustainable practices, innovative technologies, and effective project management strategies. Rather than waiting for opportunities to present themselves, he resolved to create them. That night, he built a plan. He signed up for online courses in renewable energy systems and project management. He set aside time each day to read the latest research papers, absorbing knowledge like a sponge, while stripping away the layers of fear he'd hidden behind for too long. Weeks turned into months of late nights spent crafting projects and ideas that challenged the traditional paradigms he once accepted as limitations. As he grew immersed in his studies, Jake encountered roadblocks. Some concepts eluded his understanding, and moments of frustration tugged at him, urging surrender. Yet, in those moments, the lessons from the panelists echoed in his mind. They had spoken about failure as a stepping stone, not an endpoint, and he clung to that sentiment as a lifeline. Each setback became a prompt to rethink his strategies, pushing him to dig deeper. He started a blog to document his journey, a mix of theoretical insights and personal anecdotes. Writing became a cathartic release, transforming abstract thoughts into concrete lessons for others who might face similar struggles. The process of sharing his vulnerabilities created connections with like-minded individuals who resonated with his experiences. Jake began partnering with some of them, collaborating on small-scale projects that allowed him to experiment with his new knowledge. As the collaborations blossomed, so did his network. What had once felt like an intimidating sea of professionals now seemed like a vibrant community. His confidence swelled, and he was no longer just a participant, but an emerging voice within discussions. However, each success carried its weight. The email from the industry leader lingered unaddressed in his mind, continuously reminding him of the pinnacle he still needed to reach. When would he take that leap into the unknown? And then an unexpected invitation arrived, an industry conference that focused on cutting-edge advancements in sustainable engineering, featuring the very leader he sought to impress. Would this be the moment that defined him, the one that challenged him to confront his fears head-on once more? With the conference looming, the flame of anticipation mingled with a pulse of anxiety. Jake had the potential to showcase his innovations to the broader community, but was he truly ready to take such a bold step? The tension between readiness and hesitation buzzed within him like a live wire, leaving him to wonder if he would rise to the occasion or falter in his moment of truth. Jake stood at the entrance of the conference hall, the ambiance humming with an electric energy. As he straightened his tie, memories of his past uncertainty flooded his mind, but they were countered by the burgeoning confidence he had cultivated over the months. Today, he would show up not just as a mechanic or an estranged son, but as a professional ready to redefine his narrative. Taking a deep breath, he navigated through the busy foyer, his eyes scanning the crowd filled with passionate innovators and industry leaders. Each step brought him closer to an audience that had once felt unattainable. The moment he spotted the industry leader from the email, his heart raced. But this time it was not primarily fear, it was anticipation. With his heart set on making an impression, he moved through the sessions, absorbing insights that challenged him further. Inevitably, the moment arrived when he found himself sitting in the front row, eager to engage in the panel discussion featuring the very leader whose work he respected. The atmosphere buzzed, and as the conversation unfolded, he listened intently, taking copious notes and forming keen questions in his mind. When the panel opened up for audience queries, Jake raised his hand, pulse quickening yet steadied by the resolve he had been fostering. He asked a nuanced question regarding the application of new sustainable materials in traditional automotive design, an area ripe for innovation. The speaker acknowledged him with a nod, a flicker of intrigue lighting up the room as he answered. But Jake didn't stop at that question. Encouraged by the positive reception, he joined the conversation again with additional viewpoints. He connected parallels with his own experiences working on engine modifications, illustrating how industry insights and practical knowledge could intertwine. As he spoke, every word flowed naturally, fueled by months of preparation and the fire of newfound confidence. He could see acknowledgement in the eyes of the audience. He was no longer an observer, but actively contributing to a meaningful dialogue. Upon the conclusion of the session, a flurry of applause erupted, and Jake felt an exhilarating rush of validation. The once daunting prospect of being seen now became a source of empowerment. But more importantly, after the panel, he approached the industry leader. "Dr. Summers," he began, his voice steady, "I took the liberty to outline some of the ideas I had regarding your discussion points this morning. Do you think we could collaborate on integrating those concepts into your renewable energy project? I believe there's a synergy I can bring from my background in practical applications." Dr. Summers studied him with palpable interest, the gears clearly turning behind his eyes. "I appreciate your initiative, Jake. I can see you've been doing your homework. Why don't we discuss this further over coffee later?" The relief that flooded through him was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a tangible acknowledgement of his worth and potential. In that instant, Jake realized he was not merely following in anyone's footsteps. He was establishing his own path, a journey shaped by hard work, curiosity, and perseverance. As the conference unfolded, he networked vigorously, sharing his blog and visions for sustainable innovations with like-minded individuals. Each conversation transformed into opportunities. Dr. Harper from the earlier seminar approached him, intrigued by his ideas and keen to explore mentorship options. She offered guidance and support for his professional journey, recognizing the brilliance of blending practical expertise with theoretical foundations. Walking to his car as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake felt the weight of transformation settle comfortably on his shoulders. His heart brimmed with pride. He had not just conquered the insecurities that had plagued him, but had successfully positioned himself within an industry enlightening billions. No longer the young man intimidated by shadows of self-doubt, Jake emerged as a confident innovator, bridging the gap between raw mechanics and advanced engineering in sustainable solutions. Each challenge he had faced along the way, every goodbye to insecurities, had become stepping stones toward the achievement of a final vision. He had achieved self-validation, built connections, and paved the path for the impactful innovations he ever dreamed of contributing to, thereby intertwining his mechanics roots with a cutting-edge legacy. Jake finally realized that embracing his father's legacy didn't mean abandoning his roots. It meant cultivating a new legacy that honored both. With newfound confidence and a clear vision, he knew this was just the beginning of a journey full of possibilities. And that awakening lit a fire deep within him, assuring him that he could, indeed he would, reshape the narrative of his life. Now, the time has come for you to keep this journey moving forward. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this heartfelt conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.